I'm Mark Ferrell from Bellevue, Nebraska, and this is the story of how I became Marky Five Toes. I grew up in an area that walking trails usually ran pretty close to train tracks, and one day, as I was on one of those trails, I heard someone screaming. I ran toward the sound to see what was going on, to make sure everyone was okay, and it turns out the girl had fallen while crossing the train tracks, and there was an approaching train. I ran onto the tracks to try to help her, and struggled with her foot, basically trying to free it until the train was right on top of us. I wasn't able to free her, and I knew if I left her, she would be hit by the train standing up and probably killed. So I pushed her down between the metal rails, went down on top of her to hold her down, hoping that there would be room for both of us to pass underneath the train. Turns out I was half right. There was room for her to pass underneath the train. And that began my new life as an amputee and some pretty great adventures. Much later on, when I was first moved to Omaha, I was asked to participate in a couple of prosthetic studies. And one of those studies, I was trying different high-level, high-end, high-functioning prosthetics and basically testing how quickly I acclimated to them and how they performed versus each other. And that's where my love affair with the rush foot began. I had very negative experiences with carbon fiber running legs. And when he showed me the rush foot, different color, but it had kind of a blade look to it. So I assumed it was a very similar foot. So I went into the study determined not to like it. And that lasted about 5 minutes. Put it on, I started walking around, and my brain connections started clicking. I couldn't figure out what felt so different about it. And it occurred to me, it's a very familiar feel. And my brain was trying to process the fact that it hadn't felt those sensations in 23 years because it was the same sensations that I was receiving from my flesh and blood foot. The feedback, the flex, the rollover, it felt completely natural. And I walked down, the prosthetist escorted me down to the lobby to make sure I was okay and acclimated on the foot. He opened the door and told me when to come back. I turned and just ran across the parking lot. I was jumping over like concrete medians and I ran around the entire university and back to my car. Completely winded, out of breath, stitching my side, and that is the first time I've done that, been able to do that in 23 years. And I'd always been a fairly active person, at least I thought I had been. I suddenly realized I had settled into a lower activity level lifestyle than I wanted because due to limitations of the previous feet that I had been using. Then about 4 months ago, I was introduced to the rush foot, and I got my life back. I started skateboarding again, I started BMXing again, I started mountain biking again. Looking back on it over the past 23 years and knowing what I know now versus what I went through then, I'm definitely a rush rebel for life.